It started like any other evening. Nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. I was sitting in my truck, parked outside the grocery store, waiting for the curbside pickup to be ready. The sun was dipping low, casting an orange glow across the parking lot, but I wasn't paying much attention to that. I was scrolling through my phone, half distracted, checking emails, flipping through the same news articles I'd already seen twice. Then a message popped up at the top of my screen. Laura, my wife. I'm so looking forward to you taking me back to the office. At first, I just stared at it. My brain didn't immediately register what I was looking at. It was a simple sentence. Words strung together, nothing inherently shocking. But there was something off about it. The way it was worded, the choice of words, the meaning buried underneath. I read it again, then a third time, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't meant for me. My pulse slowed for a second, like my body needed time to process the moment before everything sped up. My breathing went shallow, my fingers tightened around the phone, and a cold sensation spread through my chest. My first instinct was denial. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe she was actually talking about work, some kind of project, a deadline, something normal. But deep down, I knew better. Laura had never once, in the 10 years we'd been together, looked forward to going back to the office. If anything, she complained about work constantly. Late hours, annoying coworkers, an overbearing boss who expected too much. She'd come home frustrated, drained, sometimes barely even speaking as she kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the couch. And yet, here she was, looking forward to being taken back. By who? I exhaled sharply, staring at the message like it might change if I just waited long enough. But it didn't. It sat there, taunting me, daring me to question everything I thought I knew about my wife. I backed out of the conversation and scrolled through her texts. It was all mundane, reminders about bills, quick updates on what time she'd be home, occasional love you messages that felt more like punctuation than actual affection. Nothing suspicious, nothing out of the ordinary. But cheaters weren't stupid. They didn't leave evidence where it could be easily found. And I wasn't stupid either. I knew exactly what this meant. And suddenly, everything I'd ignored over the past few months came rushing back, hitting me all at once. The late nights. The times she came home showered, her hair damp, saying she just needed to freshen up after a long day. The way she used to reach for me in bed. But lately, she'd been turning away instead. The locked phone. The subtle smiles when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she seemed lighter some days. Happier, more relaxed, like someone who had a secret making her glow from the inside out. I had been a fool, and now I had proof. My grip tightened on the phone, my knuckles turning white. Anger bubbled up inside me, slow at first, then boiling hot. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. This wasn't sadness. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel weak. I felt rage. I wasn't going to sit around wondering, doubting, letting her spin some lie when she got home. No, I was going to get the truth, even if I had to drag it out of her. I shoved the phone into my pocket, started the truck, and yanked the wheel hard as I pulled out of the parking lot. There was only one place to go. Home, where she would have no choice but to explain herself. The drive home felt like a slow burn, a fuse steadily creeping toward an explosion I could already see coming. Every streetlight I passed, every car I overtook, every second that ticked by only fueled the fire inside me. My mind was a battlefield. Memories, moments, conversations, they all collided, twisting and reshaping themselves under this new, ugly light. It was like looking at a puzzle I had never realized was missing pieces, only to have them dumped in front of me all at once. How long had this been going on? Had she ever really loved me? Or had she just been biding her time, waiting for something or someone better? And most importantly, who the hell was he? That was the part that made my blood run hot. The idea of another man, some smug, self-satisfied bastard, thinking he had the right to touch my wife, to steal what I had built. But maybe that was the wrong way to look at it. Maybe it wasn't stolen. Maybe she had handed it over willingly. That was the thought that almost made me slam my fist against the dashboard. I took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. I needed to stay focused. No point in getting worked up before I even saw her. Laura would be home. I knew her schedule. If she was screwing around, it wouldn't be tonight. Not after she had just accidentally messaged me. No, she'd be playing it safe, pretending everything was normal. But it wasn't. I turned onto our street, my headlights sweeping over the familiar suburban houses, each one neatly lined up like they belonged in a damn postcard. It was the kind of neighborhood where people smiled too much, where everything looked perfect on the surface. But I knew better. I pulled into the driveway, cut the engine, and sat there for a second, breathing in the silence. The house looked the same as always. The warm glow of the porch light, the neatly trimmed lawn, the damn welcome mat that Laura insisted on replacing every season. On the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, everything was different now. I stepped out of the truck, my boots crunching against the gravel, and made my way up the front steps. I didn't slam the door when I walked in. Didn't call out for her. I want to see how she acted first. The house smelled like dinner. Something with garlic, maybe pasta. A normal night, a normal routine. The kind of thing I had come home to 1,000 times before. Except now I knew better. I found her in the kitchen, standing by the stove, stirring a pot like she didn't have a single damn care in the world. Her long dark hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and she was wearing one of those oversized sweatshirts she liked to lounge around in after work. She looked so casual, so comfortable, like she hadn't just sent me a message that turned my stomach inside out. "Hey, you're home early," she said, glancing up with a small smile. "Dinner's almost ready." That smile, I'd seen it so many times. It used to mean something. It used to make me feel wanted. Now it made me sick. I clenched my jaw and set my keys down on the counter, forcing myself to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, got out sooner than I thought." She nodded, stirring the pot again, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. Perfect timing. I made enough for both of us. "How was your day?" I almost laughed. "How was my day? How was my day?" "Oh, just found out my wife is cheating on me. But other than that, pretty damn great." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I pulled my phone from my pocket, unlocked it, and scrolled to her message. I tapped it open, letting the words burn into my retinas one last time before I turned the screen toward her. "What's this?" I asked, keeping my tone even. Laura turned, and for a second, just a split second, her expression froze. Then, just as quickly, she covered it up, her face smoothing out like nothing had happened. She frowned slightly, tilting her head as if she were confused. "What do you mean?" I took a slow step closer. "The message, Laura." She wiped her hands on a towel, then reached for her phone on the counter. "Hold on, let me see." "No." I cut in, my voice sharper now. "I want to hear you explain it. Right now." She blinked, hesitated, then let out a small laugh. A laugh. "Oh, that?" she said, waving a hand like it was nothing. That was embarrassing. I meant to send that to my coworker. We were talking about this stupid meeting we have tomorrow, and I guess I got the names mixed up." I stared at her. Lying. She was lying to my face. The thing about Laura was she had always been a smooth talker, one of those people who could spin a story on the spot and make it sound believable. But not this time. Not now. Because I knew, and she had no idea just how much trouble she was in. I stood there, gripping my phone so tightly I could hear the faint creak of the plastic case under my fingers. My body felt rigid, stiff with the kind of tension that begged for release, through words, through action, through something more violent than either. But I held it in, forcing myself to watch her. Laura was good. I'd give her that. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't scrambling for words or fumbling through a ridiculous excuse that would fall apart the second I questioned it. No, she was composed, relaxed even, as if she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times over. Which made me wonder, how many times had she done this before? She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her lips pressing together in that thoughtful way she always did when she wanted to seem sincere. "I can see why that looked weird," she admitted, letting out a small sigh like she was exasperated with herself. "I wasn't paying attention. I was in the middle of cooking, and I must have just tapped your name instead of Jenna's. It was supposed to be a joke, about our boss making us stay late again. You know how much I hate that. A joke. A goddamn joke. I should have been prepared for this. I should have known she wouldn't break that easily. But hearing her twist it, watching her act like I was the one being ridiculous, it made my blood boil. She wasn't even scared. Not yet. I exhaled slowly through my nose, forcing my voice to stay level. So you meant to send this to Jenna? Yes, she nodded immediately. We were just talking about tomorrow's shift. She was complaining about how Mark keeps dragging us into after-hours meetings, and I said something about how I just knew he was going to pull the same thing again. And then she shrugged, giving me an almost sheepish smile. I sent that. Meant to be sarcastic. Like, oh, can't wait for another late night. She was smooth, calculated. And if I hadn't been staring at her when she first saw that message, if I hadn't seen the split-second flicker of panic, maybe, just maybe, I would have believed her. But I had seen it, and I wasn't in the mood to play games. I tilted my head slightly, still watching her, still measuring every damn word. So if I text Jenna right now and ask her about this little joke, she'll back it up? That was the moment her composure cracked. It wasn't big, just the smallest hesitation, the briefest pause before she responded. But it was there, a delay that wouldn't have existed if she were telling the truth. Of course, she said too quickly. Go ahead. She called my bluff. But she didn't realize I wasn't bluffing. Without breaking eye contact, I unlocked my phone and scrolled to my contacts. I didn't have Jenna's number, never needed it, but I knew damn well Laura had mentioned her enough times that I could find her on social media. I typed her name into Facebook, and there she was. Same last name Laura had mentioned before, same face I'd seen tagged in work event photos. Laura's breath hitched ever so slightly. She hadn't expected me to actually do it. I tapped the message button and started typing. Hey, Jenna. This is Laura's husband. I just got a weird text from her that she said was meant for you. Mind clearing something up for me? I hit send, and then I looked up at Laura, and for the first time since I walked in that door, she looked nervous. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, like she was weighing her next move. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, my heart hammering in my chest. So, I prompted, anything you want to say before she answers? She shook her head, forcing another laugh, but now it sounded wrong. Hello. I mean, she'll say exactly what I just told you. But if this is the hill you want to die on, be my guest. She was scrambling now, trying to keep control of the situation. And that only made me angrier. I glanced at my phone. No reply yet. That was fine. Jenna might not even check her messages for a while. But that wasn't really the point. The point was, I had her cornered. And she knew it. Laura let out another exasperated sigh and turned back to the stove. Stirring the pot again like this was nothing more than some petty argument I was blowing out of proportion. Look, if you're really going to get worked up over a stupid text, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not doing this with you tonight. I had a long day, and I'm exhausted. I almost laughed. Exhausted? She hadn't even begun to understand what exhaustion felt like. I pushed off the counter, stepping closer, lower my voice. Funny how you're the one who's tired, considering I'm the one trying to figure out if my wife is screwing her boss behind my back. Her shoulders tensed ever so slightly. Not much, but just enough. A crack, and I was going to widen it. Tell me something, I continued, my voice steady controlled. When you get home from work, do you ever think about me? Or does your mind go straight to him? She turned sharply, eyes flashing with something between anger and panic. Jesus, listen to yourself. You sound insane. There is no him, okay? I made a stupid mistake and texted the wrong person. And now you're... Ding. Her mouth snapped shut. We both turned toward my phone at the same time. A reply. I could feel the shift in the air. The way Laura suddenly stiffened. The way her fingers curled slightly against the counter. She was scared now. I turned the screen toward me and read the message. Hey, I have no idea what she's talking about. We weren't texting today. My breath came out slow and measured. I looked up at her, and now she knew. The lie had shattered. There was no way out. For the first time since this whole thing started, she actually looked afraid. And I was just getting started. Silence filled the kitchen, thick and suffocating. The only sound was the faint bubbling of whatever the hell she was cooking, but even that seemed distant, meaningless. My focus was on one thing, her. Laura stood there, her face carefully blank, but I could see it. The tension in her jaw, the slight twitch in her fingers, the way her breath had gone shallow the second that text came through. She knew she was caught. I let the moment stretch, watching her, waiting. I wanted to see how she would try to worm her way out of this. I wanted to hear whatever pathetic excuse she would come up with next. Because there was no more hiding. Slowly, deliberately, I lifted my phone and turned the screen toward her. The message from Jenna sat there like a death sentence. Hey, I have no idea what she's talking about. We weren't texting today. Her eyes flicked to the screen for only a second before snapping back to me. And there it was, the real fear. It was subtle, but I caught it, the tiniest widening of her pupils, the slight parting of her lips. She was scrambling, calculating, trying to figure out how to spin this before I even had the chance to say a word. I waited. I wanted to see her squirm. She swallowed once, then forced a chuckle, soft, fake, the kind of laugh someone gives when they're trying to act like they're still in control. Okay, she said, exhaling like she was amused by all this. I don't know why she's saying that. I texted her earlier. Maybe she just forgot. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I let the silence stretch between us again. Let her words hang in the air, flimsy and weak. Then, finally I spoke. Try again. The amusement in her eyes flickered, just for a second, before she masked it again. Jesus, are you serious right now? Do you hear yourself? I took a slow step closer. Yeah, and I hear you too. And all I'm hearing is a bunch of bullshit. Her jaw clenched. No, I cut her off. My voice was sharp, low, controlled. I don't want to hear another excuse. I don't want to hear another lie. You're done, Laura. You're done. Her whole body went still. I could see it happening the exact moment when she realized she had no more room to move, no more places to hide. She was trapped, and I was going to make her face it. I pulled the stool out from the kitchen island and sat down, resting my arms on the counter. Then I gestured toward her with my phone. Go ahead. Try again. Tell me who the message was really for. She let out a breath, slow and controlled, like she was trying to buy herself a second to think. But I wasn't giving her a way out. Finally, she crossed her arms and met my eyes. It was just a misunderstanding, she said, her voice softer now, trying a different angle. Playing the reasonable one. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I swear, you're reading too much into this. I nodded slowly. Right. So I guess Jenna just magically forgot that you texted her about work, huh? She didn't answer. So what was it then? I pressed. Because it sure as hell sounds like you were making plans with someone. And it sure as hell wasn't me. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had nothing. I leaned in slightly. Tell me something, Laura. How long has this been going on? She stiffened. There is nothing going on. I smirked, shaking my head. See now that's a bad lie. You should have at least tried to give me something better. Her frustration cracked through. Because there's nothing to tell you. I laughed. Actually laughed. It was a short, humorless sound. The kind that said I wasn't buying a single word coming out of her mouth. Jesus, Laura, you really think I'm that stupid? She ran a hand through her hair, exhaling sharply. I don't know what you want me to say. I told you the truth, and you're just... I cut her off again. No, you didn't, and you know it. The panic in her eyes was growing now. She was losing control of this conversation, and she knew it. And that was when she changed tactics. She softened, dropped the anger, switched to guilt. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice quieter now. Why are you trying to make something out of nothing? I tilted my head. That's a good question. Maybe it's because my wife just sent me a text that was clearly meant for another man. Her eyes darted away for the first time, avoiding my gaze. She was slipping. I could feel it, and I wasn't going to let up. I tapped my fingers against the counter, slow and steady. So who is he? She blinked. What? I leaned in slightly. Your boss. Mark, right? That's who you meant to text. Her entire body locked up for half a second. And there it was. The confirmation. She didn't deny it. Didn't immediately correct me. Because she couldn't. I let out a slow exhale, shaking my head. Goddamn. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I held up a hand. Save it. She clenched her jaw, her breathing uneven now. You don't even know what you're accusing me of. I laughed again. Oh, I know exactly what I'm accusing you of. And then, because I wanted to see just how deep this hole went, I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the counter. Tell me something, Laura. Did you ever feel guilty? Her breath hitched. Did you ever come home, look me in the eye, and feel even a little bit of shame? She swallowed. Or did you just lie to yourself? I pressed. Tell yourself it didn't matter? That I wouldn't find out? That I was just some idiot who would never notice? She blinked rapidly. I wasn't. Wasn't what? I snapped. She flinched. The anger I'd been holding back was clawing its way out now, burning through my veins. I pushed away from the counter and stood, towering over her. You were screwing your boss. She shook her head, eyes wide. It wasn't like that. I let out a cold, humorless laugh. Oh, really? Then what was it like? She bit her lip. Tell me the truth, Laura. Right now. For the first time, her mask fully cracked. And I saw it. The guilt, the shame, the fear. She had run out of lies. She had nowhere left to hide. And now it was my turn to decide what happened next. Laura stood there, caught between fight and flight, her breath coming in shallow bursts. I'd seen her in a lot of moods over the years, happy, annoyed, tired, even furious, but never like this. This was cornered animal territory. She opened her mouth, then closed it as if she was trying to string together the right words, trying to find a way out. But the problem with being a good liar is that eventually you get too comfortable lying. You start thinking you'll never get caught. You start believing you're untouchable. Until, one day, you send the wrong text. I let the silence stretch between us, watching her carefully, watching every flicker of emotion cross her face. It was almost fascinating, the way her mind was racing, how she was weighing her next move. How to spin this. How to salvage it. How to manipulate me just one more time. But she didn't get to do that. Not anymore. You're out of time, Laura, I said, my voice cold, steady. So either you tell me the truth, or I'll make the decision for you. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine. Decision. I folded my arms across my chest. Yeah, whether I give a damn about what happens next. That got her, because she knew exactly what I meant. For the first time, real fear crossed her face. Not the fake, performative guilt she had been trying to pass off earlier. Not the irritation of someone who was just so tired of being accused. No, this was real, because now she finally understood. She wasn't just dealing with some clueless husband who would get mad for a night, maybe sleep on the couch, and then eventually forgive her after she cried enough. No, she was dealing with a man who was done. Her lips parted, and I could see the gears turning. She was deciding, should she keep lying, or should she finally just admit what I already knew? The tension in the room was suffocating. Then, finally, she exhaled. Her shoulders slumped, and she broke. I never meant for it to happen, she whispered. A bitter laugh escaped me. That's rich. She swallowed hard. I didn't. Her voice was quieter now, weaker, like she had already lost the energy to fight. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. I nodded slowly, letting those words sit in the air between us. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. What a classic excuse. I could have torn her right then and there, could have ripped her pathetic justification apart piece by piece. But I didn't. Not yet, because I wanted to hear everything first. How long? I asked. She hesitated. I took a slow, measured step closer. How long, Laura? Her breath hitched. A few months. That answer didn't surprise me. It actually pissed me off less than I expected. A few months wasn't great, but it wasn't years. Still, it was long enough. Long enough for her to look me in the eye every day and lie. Long enough for her to come home, sit across from me at the dinner table, and pretend she wasn't thinking about someone else. Long enough for her to make me think our marriage was still real, when in reality, she had already burned it to the ground behind my back. I let that settle before I asked my next question. Did you sleep with him? She flinched. That was all the answer I needed, but I wanted to hear her say it. Answer me. She squeezed her eyes shut, pressing a hand to her forehead like she was in pain. I waited. Yes. I didn't move, didn't react, didn't even blink, because deep down I already knew. But hearing it out loud, it hit different. A slow, heavy breath left my chest, and I reached up, rubbing the back of my neck. Right? Laura's eyes snapped open. It didn't. Don't. I wasn't in the mood for the bullshit excuses that always came next. It was always the same story. It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. It just happened. I didn't want to hurt you. But all those words meant nothing. Because she did hurt me. And the worst part? She had made a choice. Every single time. She had chosen him. She had chosen to meet him in secret. She had chosen to undress for him. She had chosen to send that damn text, excited to go back for more. So, no, I didn't want to hear her say it wasn't supposed to happen. Because it did happen, and she let it. I turned away, exhaling sharply through my nose, trying to process the rage that was burning through my veins. Laura took a small step forward. I can explain. I let out a low laugh, shaking my head. Explain? Explain what exactly? That you've been screwing your boss for months while coming home and pretending like everything was fine? That you sat across from me at dinner, knowing damn well you were going to sneak off to him the next day? She flinched again, her hands twisting together in front of her. It wasn't like that. Then tell me, I said, my voice dangerously calm. What was it like? She was quiet. Because she had nothing. She had no explanation that would make this okay. No words that could undo what she had done. And that was when the realization finally hit her. She had lost. I wasn't going to forgive her. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to be the kind of man who let himself get walked all over. I took a step back, creating space between us. Because she wasn't my wife anymore. Not really. She was just a liar who had finally run out of lies. You should probably start packing, I said, my voice eerily steady. Laura's eyes widened. Wait. I shook my head, cutting her off. No, Laura, we're done. You made that decision the second you opened your legs for him. Her lip trembled. Please just... I turned and walked away. Because there was nothing left to say. And I wasn't going to waste another second on a woman who had already thrown me away. I walked out of that kitchen without looking back, my footsteps heavy against the hardwood floor. My head was buzzing, my pulse hammering, but my mind was clear. I was done. There was no second chance. No marriage counseling. No working things out. She had made her choice over and over again, and now she had to live with it. Behind me, I could hear her footsteps trailing after mine, hesitant at first, then quicker, more desperate. Wait, she called out, her voice breaking. Just please wait. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I reached the living room, grabbed my keys from the table, and headed straight for the door. Where are you going? She asked, panic creeping in her voice now. I turned the knob. Wherever the hell I want, Laura. You don't get to ask me that anymore. I stepped outside and let the door slam behind me. The night air hit me like a shock to the system. Cool, crisp, freeing. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm still raging inside me. I had just walked out on my wife. Or, more accurately, the woman who used to be my wife. Because whatever we had was dead now. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I could still feel the anger rolling through me, hot and sharp, coiled tight like a spring ready to snap. I needed to calm down before I did something I'd regret. I didn't trust myself not to go looking for her boss, Mark, or whatever the hell his name was. Didn't trust myself not to drive straight to his office, kick the door in, and knock that smug son of a bitch flat on his ass. But that would just make me look like the fool, wouldn't it? It wouldn't change anything. Wouldn't undo what had already been done. I forced out a slow breath, staring out at the dark, empty street. And for the first time, it really sank in. This was over. I didn't even feel sad about it. Not really. The sadness had been eaten up by something stronger, by the hatred of being lied to, betrayed, made to look like an idiot. And now, all that was left was the cleanup. Because this wasn't going to be some drawn-out, emotional mess. I was going to erase her from my life. She was leaving. She was getting nothing. And she was going to regret every damn choice she made. I don't know how long I sat in that truck, just thinking. Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe an hour. At some point, my phone buzzed. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Laura. She was probably freaking out now. Probably realizing she had severely miscalculated. Because women like her, women who cheat and lie and think they'll always get away with it, they expect their men to be weak, to forgive, to fight for them, to be so broken that they beg them to stay. But I wasn't that kind of man. I never had been. And she was about to learn that the hard way. By the time I got back to the house, the lights were still on. She was sitting on the couch, arms wrapped around herself, her phone clutched in her hand. Her eyes snapped up the second I walked in. "Where did you go?" she asked softly. I didn't answer. I closed the door behind me, locked it, and walked right past her. She stood quickly, following me as I headed toward the bedroom. "Are we really doing this?" she asked, her voice thin, shaky. I threw open the closet door and grabbed one of the empty suitcases from the top shelf. "You are." Her breath hitched. "You can't be serious." I set the suitcase on the bed and flipped it open. She took a step forward. "Come on, can we talk about this?" I grabbed a stack of her neatly folded clothes and threw them into the suitcase without looking at her. Her voice rose. "Please, you can't just kick me out." I turned to her, my eyes burning into hers. "Watch me." Her lips trembled. "I have nowhere to go." I let out a low, humorless laugh. "That's not my problem. Maybe Mark will take you in." Her face paled. "That's not fair." "Fair," I repeated, scoffing. "You want to talk about fair, Laura?" I grabbed another handful of her clothes, shoving them into the suitcase. "Was it fair when you lied to me every single day? Was it fair when you climbed into our bed after screwing another man?" Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't like that." I slammed the suitcase shut. "It was exactly like that." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "I still love you," she whispered. I laughed in her face. "No, you don't." She flinched. I picked up the suitcase and shoved it into her hands. "You have 10 minutes to leave." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks now. "You're making a mistake." I met her eyes. Cold. Unforgiving. "No, Laura. You did." And then I turned and walked away. Because I was done. And for the first time in a long time, I finally felt free. I stood in the hallway, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Laura hadn't moved. She was still standing in the bedroom, clutching the suitcase like she couldn't believe this was happening. Like if she stood there long enough, if she cried enough, if she begged enough, maybe I'd change my mind. But I wasn't going to. Because I wasn't like her. I didn't lie. I didn't betray. And I sure as hell didn't forgive someone who did. I walked back into the room, slow and deliberate. She flinched when she saw me, like she was expecting me to start yelling, to finally lose control. But I wasn't yelling. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe. "Are you going to leave on your own? Or do I need to call someone to help you pack?" Her lip trembled. "You really mean it?" I raised an eyebrow. "What part of you have 10 minutes made you think I was joking?" A tear slid down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly, like she was embarrassed. I thought maybe you'd cool down. Maybe you'd realize this isn't what you really want." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You think I need to cool down? Laura, you should be grateful I didn't do worse." She swallowed hard. "I didn't want to hurt you." I tilted my head. "But you did." She opened her mouth, then shut it. Because she knew there was no coming back from this. No fixing it. No do-overs. This wasn't a fight where one of us slept on the couch and made up in the morning. This was the end of us. She seemed to realize that all at once. Her shoulders slumped, her face crumbling under the weight of what she had done. She looked so much smaller now, so much weaker than the woman I had married. Or maybe she had always been this way. Maybe I had just been too blind to see it. She let out a shaky breath. "Where am I supposed to go?" I shrugged. "Not my problem." She winced like I had hit her. "I don't have anywhere else." "Call him." Her breath caught. She looked at me, eyes wide, pleading. It wasn't like that. I stared at her. "Stop saying that." It was exactly like that. She sniffled, glancing away. "You thought you'd never get caught." I continued, my voice calm. "You thought I'd never notice. Thought you could come home every night and play the perfect wife while sneaking off to screw your boss whenever it was convenient. You thought I'd never figure it out." She didn't respond. Because what could she say? She had done exactly that. "You were never going to tell me, were you?" I asked. She hesitated, and for a second I saw a flash of something in her eyes. Guilt, shame, maybe even regret. Then she whispered, "No." I nodded. "That's what I thought." Another tear slipped down her cheek. "I really did love you." I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. "No, Laura, you loved the life I gave you." Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Because she knew I was right. She had never loved me. She had loved what I provided. The stability, the home, the safety of knowing she had someone who would always be there. Until now. Now, she had nothing. I pushed off the doorframe and took a step back. "You've got 5 minutes." She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. Then, finally, she started moving. She grabbed a few more things, shoving them into the suitcase haphazardly. It wasn't neat, wasn't organized like she usually packed. She was panicked now, her hands shaking slightly. Good. She deserved that panic. She had spent months sneaking around, feeling powerful, feeling untouchable. Now she got to know what it felt like to lose everything in an instant. I watched as she zipped the suitcase and grabbed her purse. Then she just stood there, like she wanted to say something, like she thought there was still something left to salvage. I raised an eyebrow. "What are you waiting for?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. I don't want you to hate me." I let out another laugh, shaking my head. "That's the thing, Laura." I met her eyes, cold and sharp. "I don't feel anything for you anymore." That was the final blow, the last nail in the coffin. She let out a soft, broken sound, then turned and walked to the door. I followed her, watching as she hesitated one last time before stepping outside. She turned back, eyes glassy. "If I could take it back, I would." I tilted my head. "Would you?" She hesitated, because we both knew the truth. She wouldn't. She had enjoyed it. She had gotten away with it for months. The only thing she regretted was getting caught. She exhaled shakily. "Goodbye." I didn't answer. I just stood there, watching as she walked down the steps, suitcase in hand, until she disappeared down the driveway. And then, finally, I closed the door, locked it, and stood there in the silence of my home. My home, because now, without her, it actually felt like mine again. I took a slow breath, letting the quiet settle over me, and for the first time in months, I felt peaceful, because Laura was gone, and I was free.